whatever you have learned about hypnosis, just forget about it.
We've all been kind of hypnotized anyway.
From an accountant to a nutrition store owner to Utah's most sought-after professional hypnotist,
James Gustason. He is changing lives in an instant.
You can white-knuckle your way through anything, but I don't like doing that. I'd rather just say...
His upcoming 2026 book launch is challenging everything we know about emotional healing.
She's deathly allergic to dogs.
That's right.
Deathly allergic.
Yep.
And she had to go to the ER for EpiPens, right?
50 in 1 year. After that, 2 days later, she bought a golden retriever. So I studied with people out of London, out of Toronto, out of Florida. I traveled to California to do my formal certifications, different techniques. I went to Las Vegas. Everything is just simply a coding in our nervous system that thinks it's protecting you, but it isn't.
What are 3 things that they can do that will set them on this course to change this unconscious coding?
Shift. He walks over to behind the other side of my desk, takes a bag out, and he starts to eat some avocado. Avocado used to put him in the hospital. And in that moment, I'm like, this is happening, right? In that moment, I forgave all things that had anything to do with my divorce. It was instantaneous, and it was the most overwhelming experience I'd ever had all through. It was like Groundhog Day. You get up in the morning, you think the same thoughts, you do the same things, you end up with the same outcome.
Let's go ahead and hypnotize me. Let's
Okay.
go.
In a moment, I'm going to have you take 3 deep breaths.
Hey friends, welcome to That's Some Real Shift. I'm your host, Marilee. Here we talk about the moments that change us, the ones that we choose and the ones that we never saw coming. So take a breath, get settled in, and let's dive into some real shift together. I wanted to share a little bit about this next episode that you're about to watch. It is about hypnotizing people. I want to start off by saying that I do not take hypnotism or energy work lightly. I have always been one to really be careful about who you trust with your own energy and your mind. I think that everyone listening should be very careful about who they trust if they choose to try hypnosis. You can't ever be too careful who you are letting into your subconscious and your mind. Have made some big shifts in your life. I just want to jump right in. I've known you for 15 years, and then I randomly ran into you at the grocery store.
Yeah, I remember that.
And you said you were hypnotizing people.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So
I
I
was
am.
like, what?
Yeah, it's an interesting story, really, how I went from a nutrition store, I still have it, and just trying to help people figure out how to have a happier life through nutrition and through taking care of themselves. And then you walked in and you were pretty amazed at what we did, and we became friends. And, we've known each other for some time, but if you recall, I used to do specifically where I would sit down with people and I'd help them with nutrition, and it was really fulfilling. So when you came into my store at the time, I was newly into being an entrepreneur, so to speak. I had been an accountant in the past, and I'd gone to school and done all these things to try to kind of walk the standard life where you go out and you get a career and you do these things. And I just found that it wasn't very fulfilling. So I thought the next thing is I was going to help people with nutrition, and that's when we met. And I'd only been open a little bit of time. You came in and with your husband, and we kind of hit it off. We both knew that we wanted to help people in different ways.
Right. How do you go from running a nutrition store, and you are helping people change their lives and transform their bodies, and I believe you still do that, to helping people changing their minds or hypnotizing people?
So the interesting thing is we've all been kind of hypnotized anyway, and that's the story we tell ourselves. Like every day when we wake up and we review our day and who we think we are and how we're going to do things, that's just a form of hypnosis. But what happened was I'd been running my store for a little while, and I started to do nutrition plans with people. And it was interesting that I could predict pretty highly who was going to follow through on the plan and who wasn't. And as I sat with them and I gave them all the science, right? I know we're a society that's always about the science, but we often forget there's the emotional piece. that we have to account for if we're going to follow through with anything. So as I sat with people and I made all these plans for them and they said they were committed, I knew with, I'd say 95% accuracy that at the end of the 12 weeks or however long I chose to work with them, that they were probably not going to follow through. I didn't want to project that onto them, which I never did. I always encouraged them, but it was pretty certain. And the one key thing that I noticed is the way that they saw themselves internally was going to determine the external view, right? And so if they didn't see themselves as someone that could be thin or that could lose weight or could be successful in whatever, there was no way that the external version was ever going to match. And so fast forward, right? I've been doing this for about 5 years, and I was just burning the candle at both ends. I was always stressed out because I wanted to get better. I wanted to do more. I was always predicting what was going to come up next. And I wasn't ready for the next thing. You remember what happened in 2016?
I do. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was a pretty emotional time for me. I'd found out that it was time to part ways with my then wife, right? There were some different things that happened. We won't go into details, but obviously it was very emotional. And I started to realize that so much of what my expectations were for my life weren't matching with where the direction was going. And so we amicably handled the divorce. The kids were always our priority, so we did really well with that. But afterwards, I was finding that I was isolated. And I was finding that I was going down the wrong path emotionally. I was reacting to things. I was no longer kind of determining where I wanted to go, and I was just responding to what was happening to me. I was kind of lost. And so you want to know how I got to where I am now? Well, it all kind of started in 2018. I was just at the point where I just didn't know where to go, what to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my business, and I just didn't believe in myself. And I happened to come across a podcast, and I watched this podcast, and there was a doctor on there by the name of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Have you ever heard of him?
Yes, I have.
He has quite the amazing story, so I won't go and explain all that. By all means, you could watch it. The short of it is he was teaching that the way we anticipate the future, the way we believe it's going to be, who we believe we are internally will ultimately predict the outcome. See, we have very predictive minds. The unconscious mind's job is to guide you towards the future that it anticipates is going to keep you safe. And so my life to that point was equal to stress. It was equal to that anticipation. It was equal to that. So that's all I was manifesting in my life was the same thing over. It was like Groundhog Day. You get up in the morning, you think the same thoughts, you do the same things, you end up with the same outcome. And so when I was listening to this podcast, I had one of those moments that just said, maybe there's a better way. I read his books. You Are the Placebo is one of the best books I've ever read, and so I highly recommend it to anybody. As I read this book, he talked about understanding that even though we have these pre-programmed lifestyles or whatever we want to call it, we can change those. We can interrupt the pattern. We can change it, and we can actually design the life that we want. So that I went from what we might call anticipatory stress, trying to predict the future, to curiosity, right?
So you went through a divorce, and then in a period of 2 years, you were living this life that you were like, this is not who I want to be.
That's right.
And then you listen to this podcast that shifts everything for you and opens up your mind to the possibility that, hey, like, it doesn't have to be this way. And it sounds like it's kind of like the law of attraction for your brain. And I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. I'm also a big believer in the law of the spoken word. I believe that I'm always telling my kids, don't tell yourself that. Don't put that in the universe. Quit telling yourself that. Because I believe that your mind and body believes what you tell it. I think there's a whole nother layer to that I don't even know about yet. And in fact, I know there is.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you have to really think that people don't realize that what determines where we're placing our focus is kind of where we're at in a brainwave state. And not to get too technical, but science has proven that we have these different levels in our minds of alertness and focus going from internal to external. Delta, which is deep sleep, that's when we're asleep. There's one called theta. Theta is between 4 and 8 hertz, and this is a state of hyper learning. And what's interesting is until about age 7 or 8, all of us were in theta.
Like all the time?
Yes, all the time. In fact, the Jesuit priests used to have a saying. They said, "Give me a child until they are 8, and I will show you the man." What they were basically understanding is, in those first 7 years, we create the framework for how our life is going to basically run. And everything that we've learned in those first 7 years, how we react to things, the meanings that we give to things, right? Because ultimately how we feel about something is based on the meaning that we've given it. We have these predetermined meanings, right? We have definitions, we have patterns. We watched our parents, not just what they told us directly, but what we observed. When we observe them, we download that to some degree as, this is how I handle this when it arises. And so until about age 7 or 8, when we're in this open-minded state, that's why we learn so quickly. We frame so many things that later in life show up, and we don't even know where they came from.
What about when we're going through this? I bet a lot of listeners and people watching this, in their head, they're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm screwed. Because, like, I was in a broken family. I went through this, I went through that. And then it's like, okay, that is a lot of programming to try to undo until you're 7 or 8. Is it hopeless for these people that come from... Because I try to put myself into theta.
Okay.
I started learning about the power of the mind, and I couldn't do it. I was listening to this thing and that I found, and I was like, I'm going to put myself in theta. Because I had learned that theta can help, but I couldn't even go there. I was like, okay, this is not working.
So,
clearly I did not know what I was doing.
Well, let's put it this way. You may have been in theta, but you didn't have proper technique and focus, right? The purpose that you had was not there, because you go in and out of theta multiple times a day. The ones I can definitely talk about specifically is when you're falling asleep between 5 and 15 minutes before you go into sleep and you're actually consciously out, you're in theta, right? That's that drifting state where we go from the alert world around us. Let's say if you fall asleep with the TV on and you hear the words in the background, and eventually, suddenly, it's still there, but it's not there, and the next thing you know, you're waking up, right? So you're in theta brainwave state. It's just how much energy is processing in the brain, and it's mostly associated with the emotional side of the mind. It's not the analytical mind. If the analytical mind is active, we're not falling asleep. So you go into theta in the morning, and when you wake up in the or at night, and then you wake up in the morning, you go through theta as well. So it could have been that you were in theta, but you didn't have proper direction, and you didn't know what it was supposed to feel like, see? So a definition, like I was saying earlier, right? Meanings determine our experience. And so you didn't know what it meant to be in theta, and therefore you didn't know how to define it. And so you thought that you had failed at it, but more than likely you were there. You just didn't know it, and you didn't know what to do with it. And so that kind of brings us to, okay, you're up to age 7 or 8. You got a lot of programming, right? And the good thing is there's a lot of good programming in there as well. And there's a lot that goes on that we don't necessarily code as survival, right? Because the unconscious mind's prime directive is to keep you alive. And if keeping you alive means you have tribal, so are you in a family of, your friends, your environment? Are you in a position where you have plenty of what you need, like food and clothing? Is anything in the environment trying to hurt you? And these are all things that we're coding our experiences with, and a lot of them are benign. They don't code. It's usually with some stronger emotions, some heightened events that we code them in our nervous system to say, either avoid this or want more of it. And how our nervous system decides to tell us to avoid it or want it may not make any sense to our grown-up minds, but to a young child, it means everything. And so I guess to bring this back around, right? So we're in theta, and then when we're 8, 9, and 10, we go and spend more time in what's called alpha and even in beta. Now, alpha is kind of like that relaxed state. Like you and I might be kind of in alpha right now because it's more of a relaxed setting. We're not out trying to manage the world. We're not putting out fires. And so in that state is a really good place to learn as well. And that's why we spend time in alpha in those years, because we're still growing. It just doesn't quite have the same power or focus that it did. And then beta. Beta is a higher brainwave frequency where we spend most of our time as adults. It's great for problem solving. It's great for dealing with things. Unfortunately, it's also associated with anxiety and predictive. And so when I was going back and I was listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza, I listened to his podcast and then I read his book, he talked a lot about these brainwave states and how if we can access theta and give it proper context, the techniques, the context, that we can unwire or rewire parts of the brain that creates the problem. And it says, there's a saying that says neurons that fire together wire together. But if we don't continually fire them, they'll prune naturally and they'll resolve. And so I was listening to his podcast and reading his book, and he talked about doing meditation. I'm horrible at meditation. I still am.
Me
right?
too. It
But
is
that
so
doesn't
hard.
that doesn't mean there's not a better way. So I did manage to do some of these meditations. And I remember it was, I think, late April. I had a meditation where I thought, hey, I've hit theta. And in that moment, I forgave all things that had anything to do with my divorce. It was instantaneous, and it was the most overwhelming experience I'd ever had in forgiveness. And there's a saying that says when you forgive someone, you only find that you unlock the prison door to find you are the one behind the bars. And that couldn't be more true. In that moment, I forgave. And I sent texts and messages to all the people that had anything to do with it. And I completely and totally forgave the circumstances. And in that moment, my life started to shift. It started to change. And so I was hooked. So I started studying everything I could about the mind, about how we can create our reality. It was probably a little bit later in the year, I'd read 3 or 4 books from Joe Dispenza and from Bruce Lipton and all these other people. I watched The Secret and a lot of these, and I'm like, there's got to be more to this. There's got to be a way to help more people than myself to change. And then it brought me back to thinking about all those people that came into my store and said, this is who I am. I'm going to try the next thing, which is someone telling me how to eat, and I'm going to get the result. But deep inside, their inner identity was still someone that could never do it. It was interesting. And when I was going all the way back to 1995, I used to work graveyards. So on my days off, I had nothing to do but watch infomercials. So I'm sitting there one night watching the infomercials, and up comes this Hypnotize Yourself, Hypnotize Anybody by Marshall Silver. Still an amazing hypnotist, and wow, I learned a lot from him. But I bought it, but when I got it, it just didn't resonate. So I kind of put it on the shelf, and I didn't think much about it. So
And when was that?
That was all the way back in 1995. Can you believe that? It was old cassette tapes and a VHS on how to hypnotize anybody. And it's just kind of interesting that there was a mini bump in the direction of, hey, there's more all the way back then, but I wasn't ready. And there's a saying that says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I had to be ready. And so in that moment that I did that meditation, and I read those books and I defined what I wanted, suddenly I was ready. So the teachers all appeared. And so I'm like, theta is just a brainwave state. And are there other ways to get there other than meditation? And then I remembered I still have those cassettes.
Oh,
and I went and found them, but the VHS got eaten in the VCR player that doesn't work anymore. So I'm like, now what am I going to do? So did some looking up on YouTube, and I found it. I found a thing that said how to hypnotize anybody. So I watched it multiple times, and I'm like, I think I can do this. And so there were a couple friends over at the house, and I was just like, anybody want to be hypnotized? And they're like, wow, that sounds awesome, right? So I'm sitting here going through this, and his is more of kind of like at the moment, the way he teaches, kind of the stage stuff, which is the thing that most people associate hypnosis with is the goofy stuff, right?
That's what when you said hypnotizing people, I was like imagining you making people cluck like chickens and bark like dogs and embarrass themselves. And I was like, oh,
Doing that, James,
I am never going to be hypnotized.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, that and media, TV, movies and things, they always portray this as something happening to you, not something that you're choosing to do. So
those people that are doing that, they're choosing it consciously?
Context. Anything. So realize that just like you and I talking here, this is context, right? What is the meaning behind why we're talking? Like if it was more of a formal setting, I would be acting differently. You would be, and so understanding that hypnosis, once they figured out that people that are called somnambulists, which means really highly hypnotizable, somnambulist actually means sleepwalker, if you can believe it. So if you were a sleepwalker as a child, someone that want your sleep, it's likely you're pretty good at hypnosis. So somnambulists are only about 5% of the population, so they're pretty rare. And that's why when they do one of those shows, they have everybody go through these things and hold your hands together, and I'm going to tell you can't separate them. And then they identify the people who aren't pulling their hands apart. And then they call them up on stage because they're going to be really good at it. And they know they're going to go up there and act that way because that's kind of the context, right? They knew that
Okay.
was coming. So no one's going to go up on stage and reveal all their, darkest secrets. It's not going to happen. And that never even happens in therapeutic hypnosis. People don't realize that it's context that can be in your mind only. It doesn't have to, I don't have to know everything that's happening.
So you could hypnotize someone for something, and we haven't even gotten to all the crazy things of why anyone would want to be hypnotized. But you're saying that someone could access these parts of their brain with you, and they have full control over their mind.
Absolutely. So understand this. There's kind of different levels of who we are, right? And so there's something called, and this is through NLP, which is another topic, but there's several levels of influence on what makes people do what they do. There's environment. So we have different hats we wear based on the environment we're in. If we don't like the environment and that's making us behave poorly, then we can just eliminate the environment. Number two is behaviors, and those are things that we've learned over time and we've conditioned. Luckily, we know behaviors can change. The one above that is skills and techniques and things that we learn, so we can always learn more. And above that's the identity, and above that is the purpose. So someone will always have that purpose. It's not even willpower, it's just who they are. And you cannot hypnotize anybody to do anything against that. It's just not possible. And so when I work with someone, understanding the purpose of the hypnosis isn't about having them do something they normally wouldn't do. It's about allowing the part of their mind that no longer wants that but can't seem to get out of its own way to shift, to get out of the way and allow for a new vision, a new way of doing things to arise. So going back to this time when I hypnotized somebody, he was having a hard time. So I hypnotized him and I did some of those fun things because that's what people associate with it. So they knew that that's kind of what's going to happen. But I had learned enough that said you never let a good trance go to waste. And so I asked him, and we'd conversate. His eyes are open, we're talking. He's just very relaxed. His mind is in that theta brainwave state. How many kids do you know running around with their eyes open? They're still in theta, right? So it's not some mystical place. It's just a place where you're more receptive to ideas, your own ideas. And that's the beauty of it. So I asked him, what's going on? He says, I'm having a hard time with this test. I can't seem to remember it. I'm studying. And I said, well, I can help you with that. I can't put things in your mind that aren't there. It's not magic, but I can help you recall it. I said, so this is what's going to happen. When you get in and you're ready to take the test, providing you studied, you'll sit down, you'll close your eyes, you'll take 3 deep breaths, and when you open your eyes, you'll return to this state, the very receptive state that you're in now, that you can recall all of the information you put in there, and you'll do just fine. And then I counted him out, right? That's what hypnosis is kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, your eyes are, all that stuff. And so a week later, I see him, and I'm like, hey, how did it go? And he says, you won't believe this. I got the highest score in the
Shut
class.
up.
And he was like, this is amazing. And some other friends that were involved, they're like, well, it's my turn now. It's my turn. So I needed some practice, right? So I was hypnotizing people. And even in my store, if someone came in and they were receptive to it, I'm like, hey, you want to get hypnotized? They said, sure. So I'd hypnotize them. So I got some experience, but I lacked a lot of the technique for therapeutic stuff. And so that's what I wanted. So I started to study and I took many online courses. Suddenly we're in COVID. So luckily, everything was online. So I studied with people out of London, out of Toronto, out of Florida. I traveled to California to do my formal certification, different techniques. I went to Las Vegas. I met some of the most interesting people. And it was pretty cool because I saw medical doctors, I saw psychiatrists, I saw just regular everyday people that were looking to take more control of their life. And it was just amazing to see such a group of people looking to help others. And that's where it all came about. So I will tell you this experience. I was kind of like you. I didn't know how to define the proper, like, am I hypnotized? Am I not hypnotized? Am I in theta? Am I not in theta? So I asked this guy when I went to Las Vegas. This is the first experience, even before I did all those trainings. And I said, will you hypnotize me? And he's like, absolutely. So he takes me aside and he does what's called an instant induction. And he says, in a moment, I'm going to point at my watch. And no matter how hard you try, you'll just laugh because it just seems like the right thing to do. And then he did. And he started pointing his watch and I laughed uncontrollably. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And that was like, it was a belief stacked on a belief, stacked on a belief. And suddenly I realized that I had more control over what I wanted, not what the world was telling me I could have. It seems simple in what I just said, and it doesn't make sense, but in that moment, it meant everything to me. And at the end of that, he says, and from this moment forward, you're going to be the most amazing hypnotist that you think you can be. And that has come true more than anything. And I've been just amazed at all the people that I've been able to help. And it's just an amazing experience to see someone so riddled with anxiety, so riddled with anything, just walk away. And the coolest thing, Marilee, is they start talking in past tense without even realizing it. And that's when I know the subconscious mind has accepted a new belief. Because they say, yeah, I remember when I used to do this. When someone says, yeah, I struggle with this, I know that they're not quite there yet. And most people I work with, it's 1 or 2 sessions, and it's absolutely amazing. It's cool because I know the postmarkers, if you will, of them transferring from limiting belief to constant anxiety to autoimmune to allergies. Everything is just simply a coding in our nervous system that thinks it's protecting you, but it isn't. It just became something that once served you, but no longer does. And how many stories do we tell ourselves that just doesn't carry any value anymore?
So many. I believe the power of the mind. And I remember when you were first telling me about this whole hypnotism thing. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't even know. Then I talked to you again and you said something that made me go like, what? Like, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
And it was your now wife.
Yep, Katie,
who you were dating.
Mm-hmm.
And she's deathly allergic to dogs.
That's right.
Deathly allergic.
Yep.
And she had to go to the ER for EpiPens, right?
50 in 1 year.
50 in 1 year. And
Yeah.
had she always been allergic to dogs?
No. So that's a story. And let me just preface this real quick. Because of COVID, right, I started working with people to get their sense of smell back and their sense of taste. And I was having about a 60% success rate. It was just amazing. And a lot of people that came to me for that specific reason, it wasn't just that they couldn't smell. Some people just smelled garbage and they smelled rotten eggs and stuff all the time. And I'm like, that would be horrible. That would be worse than not being able to smell.
Yeah.
And if you look up on PubMed or any of these things, there's hundreds of published, peer-reviewed studies about how hypnosis can help with allergies and all these other things. So I already had a belief system, right? Remember how when I laughed at his watch, there was something in my mind that said, I can do this, right? In that moment that I saw the peer-reviewed stuff, because I am an analytical person, and that's why sometimes it's a little harder for someone with a very analytical mind to go in to these lower brainwave states because they're analyzing it the whole time. But I knew in those moments, it's always the little things as they compile sometimes that take us from disbelief to commitment. And so I'd already helped people I had one guy that came into me that had 7 food allergies. This is before I ever met my wife. And the interesting thing is he walked into my store and he was looking for something that he could take because he couldn't eat any fruits or vegetables. He would go anaphylactic. And so at that precise moment, I said, well, because I'm like, I'd rather resolve the problem than sell him a supplement. That's just who I've become. And I started asking him some questions. This has always been the way it is and all these things. And he started to open up a little bit about it. And just then, a customer who I'd helped his son with something similar came up to buy something. He said, oh, he can just hypnotize you, it'll go away. And I was like, well, there's no better testimony than that. So he says, well, when can I meet with you? And I'm like, let's meet in 3 days. So he comes in with his wife. Usually, I don't have a problem someone else being in the room when I hypnotize somebody, but sometimes I'm worried that the person I'm hypnotizing is worrying about what the other person is doing, right? And so a hypnosis is nothing more than narrowing of attention and absorption in what is going on inside, right? We're not worried about the external world. We're not framing things based on what is outside of us, because every change that's positive that happens to you in your life happens from the inside, okay? So,
You're explaining it, but I feel like it's something that would have to be experienced to truly understand what you're talking about. But so you're hypnotizing him, and he's never been hypnotized,
Nope.
And he has this food allergy.
Mm-hmm. So they come in, they sit down, and his wife's watching. She does a lot of meditation and stuff, so I'm not worried about what she's thinking. I know she's on board, right? But he's this big guy. He's big. He's like a construction worker and somebody that you just would never expect, someone that would be so willing to say, I've had enough. I want something better, right? And not taking I'm a tough guy and I'm going to push through this. It was, I need someone to help me. And so when I hypnotized him, I won't go into details, but basically there was a neurological response that was created when he was about age 5. And
And
he
when
didn't,
he was hypnotized,
he
he knew
accessed
that?
Yeah, he accessed the memory once he was hypnotized. He didn't even know it was there. And that's one of the problems with a lot of, I don't want to bag on anybody, right? But a lot of therapists that I've worked with, because I've gone to therapy myself, is it's my unconscious mind is the reasons I have the problem, not my conscious, but I'm dealing with it consciously. So how do I resolve the problem where the problem wasn't created? Going into hypnosis, we're able to access the nervous system, which was why it was created. So once he's hypnotized, which is a very easy process, even I might just hypnotize you at the end of this. We'll see, right?
We'll see.
So I got him into what we call trance. It's just, you're in a trance now of a wakefulness, right? Everything we're in, any feeling or experience we're having is a trance state. And so the word trance doesn't mean suddenly you're a zombie. It just means there's a different brainwave state you're in. So once he was hypnotized and I had him access the feeling, everybody has a feeling, and there was a feeling that there was something wrong with him. And I had him access that feeling. And then I just simply asked his unconscious mind to guide us to when it was created. And there's techniques that I won't go into over that because, you know what?
Yeah, you have to probably go through that experience.
So I guided him, and he was there. He was 5 years old. And unfortunately, his dad was really angry with him because of a baseball game, and he didn't hit the ball, and his dad was yelling at him. And suddenly it just, for some reason, there's no logical reason for him to suddenly not 30 years later not be able to eat these things. But I trust the unconscious mind. It's what's healing itself. It's what's doing everything. I only guide someone there. I don't do anything. I help them get to the place. He used the techniques that I know will help. So in that moment, you should have seen the shift, like a weight was taken off of him. And he cried. And it was humbling, right? Because I see this man who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, providing for his family and everything else, and yet he still felt there was something wrong with him because of an experience when he was 5 years old. So by guiding him through allowing his mind and his nervous system to accept that he wasn't responsible for the way his father was behaving, it created the resolution and the resolve that was needed. And I bring him out of hypnosis, and he's sitting there, and I'm like, how you feel? He's like, I feel like I'm a different person. This is absolutely amazing. And I said, that's what this is about. It's about helping you resolve your own thing. I just know how to help you. So this is what shocked me, though. He walks over to behind the other side of my desk where I usually just consult with people, and he takes a bag out, and he starts to eat some avocado. Avocado used to put him in the hospital. And in that moment, I'm like, this is happening, right? So I'm like, wow. And he eats it, and his wife's watching him, and he's like, nothing. This is absolutely amazing. I cannot believe this. And to this day, he still sends people to me.
No way.
So obviously, my belief in what is possible only strengthens with each person that I help. So now fast forward, it's the fall of 2021. I set up this date with the most amazing woman. We sit down. Everything is textbook. We can make a movie out of this date. So I tell her that after I'd gotten divorced, I bought 2 puppies. And they were Border Collie Huskies, and they had a ton of energy, and they were naughty together. So they were running around causing all kinds of trouble, chewing on wires and everything else. So I had dated someone for a little while, and she convinced me to get rid of one of my dogs. I don't take my responsibilities lightly, and that kind of broke me. But I did it because in the moment, like I said, I was at a place in my life where I wasn't who I wanted to be. And so I told her on that first date, I said, I have a dog. He goes everywhere with me. He sits in the truck. He does everything. And I said, I'll never get rid of my dog. So we just need to be clear. And she said, I would never do that. Right. Well, little did I know she had a dog allergy. Now, to give some credit here, she had done some therapy and had gotten it from anaphylactic shock down to annoyance, right? Her throat would still get itchy and she'd react a little bit when she was around a dog. So she was willing to bet that she would be okay because she wanted this to continue, and as did I. Well, fast forward a little bit, everybody, she comes over to my house with her kids, and my kids meet her, and everybody's happy and everything else. And afterward, she's like, I have a little bit of an itch. I didn't tell you this. It used to be really bad, but now it's not, and all this stuff. And she looks at me and says, can't you just hypnotize me, get rid of them? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So the next day I hypnotized her. A similar situation, something happened when she was young. We accessed it. We changed that neurological response to the event and not assigned the scared feeling, the worry to the dog.
Like you recoded the
Yeah,
memory that she had.
exactly. That's all you do. The memory doesn't change. The meaning does.
Okay.
Right? So the meaning changed. So therefore, she was able to resolve, the nervous system resolved what created the allergy. And then after that, 2 days later, she bought a golden retriever. And we still have both dogs, right? And so that was my moment of, maybe I'm not going to hypnotize people to stop smoking or to do these things. And yes, I will work with those people. It became more to me. It became more about maybe everything in your life that isn't right is just a coding. Ones and zeros. On, off, right? If suddenly you can't eat something you used to, well, what changed? Your body didn't change, just something in that changed that says, this is scary now, and you can't do that, right? And I'll just share this one just to kind of put how it doesn't always make sense, right?
Yeah.
So again, I'm in my store, right? People come to me for all kinds of things for nutrition. This guy came in, he's 21 years old. He was looking for something that didn't have gluten. And he's like, I have gluten, this and that and the other. And I'm like, how long's that been? Because I always ask the question. And he's like, it just seems kind of recent. And usually there's things that maybe activate it. And I won't go into that right now because that's just a whole nother podcast, really. I said, well, how would you like to be able to eat gluten again instead of trying to avoid it? And he said, okay. And I said, all right, let me work with you. Come back and we'll do a session. I have an office where I do that. And so I hypnotized him, and his moment that created this. So he was 3 years old. He was at grandma's house. He was the apple of grandma's eye. Grandma never got upset, loved him, always taking care of him. Well, he was at grandma's house, and she just made some cookies. She said, you can't have a cookie yet, but you can have one after dinner. Well, grandma left for a minute, so he took a cookie, and then he went into a different room where he didn't think grandma would find him. And he was hiding behind the chair eating this cookie. Well, in comes grandma, and grandma sees him and just says, you're a very naughty boy for taking a cookie when when you weren't supposed to, and so you don't get a cookie later. That was it. Nothing crazy, but to his little nervous system, grandma suddenly, his tribe, right, the part of the brain that says this is important, said, uh-oh, I don't want this to ever happen again. But it didn't do anything until later when an activating event happened when suddenly he can't eat gluten. After that, though, he went right back to eating gluten, just no problem at all. So it's really quite amazing to think that if you're struggling with imposter syndrome, and I think all entrepreneurs have that, or if you're having that concern about what are people going to think about me when I decide to do a podcast or to open a business, and you suddenly have all these ruminating thoughts, right? And we start to tell our story. And the unconscious mind learns through 3 ways. One is repetition. Tony Robbins says repetition is the mother of skill. They say 10,000 hours is needed for anybody that wants to be a professional in, say, basketball, playing the piano, whatever. But repetition codes the nervous system. This is important, pay attention. Number 2 is a singular strong emotional event. And unfortunately, we have a lot of those that are typically negative, right?
Yes.
Like something bad happens and we go into this heightened state of awareness and we assign meaning to it. And our nervous system says, I don't like this. I want to avoid it. I'll come up with my way of dealing with it. And suddenly 5 years later, you can't eat a cookie. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. And then the third way is through immersion. And this goes back again to kind of Tony Robbins' thing, is where you go in and you become the process. So think about when you had like
a fake it till you make it type of a
kind of, in a way. Well, think of it this way. And I don't know, I've had different jobs throughout my life. You know, every time I quit a job, that personality that did that job simply stopped. And I became someone that now does this job. Okay? Because I became immersed in this. I didn't go back and visit this once in a while. I became this person. I used the same skills. So as we do that, we're able to change a pattern through immersion, right? We become something different. When we apply these 3 things, we can create change within days, sometimes hours. And that's why working with someone that knows how to do this and help you get to the right place is helpful. Now, I was talking to you about something prior to this, about usually really strong emotional events we always see them as negative.
Yeah.
But I shared with you something that I'm going to revisit now. And it was the moment when you held your first child in your arms right after you gave birth. In that moment, everything changed, right?
It did.
You could not become the person you were 3 minutes before having that baby. When I held my daughter, each one of my children really, in that moment, I became somebody different. And so the good things can happen instantly too. Like when we fall in love a lot faster than people think. I fell in love with Katie on the first date within minutes. And now she'll admit she did too. But it's not something that's drawn out. Those moments happen instantly. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, how many things in your life can change instantly through that proper framing and by having an experience that is equal to that new state that you want?
So let's say that someone is listening right now and they are stuck in their life.
Okay.
And maybe the step after in a little while will be to come visit you
Okay.
and change their whole life. But until that moment, they're stuck. They're on this hamster wheel and they want things to change. What are 3 things that they can do that will set them on this course to change this unconscious coding that they have subconsciously? I know that there is a lot of work that people have to do, but how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right?
Exactly. So the first one I'm going to say right now is possibly the hardest one. And I start with the hardest one because it's always easier to go downhill. The first thing you need to do is you got to stop blaming. You have to take responsibility. You have to say, if something's going to change, it's me. I can no longer let the story about my rough childhood, about my dad, about my mom, or about anything, it can no longer be their responsibility because they're not going to come change you. You are. So the blame is still there, but you no longer give it the power. It's okay to say, I had a rough childhood, but realize that isn't changing you. Responsibility and understanding that you're the only one that can make the change. That takes a little bit of time to kind of think through that, but I can promise you when people start to say, wait a minute, how can I take responsibility and no longer give the energy back? It's in the past, it's difficult, but it's framing what you expect. So understanding that you need to start to stop the blame game.
It's like the victor versus victim mentality. I was talking to a friend once, actually a mentor of mine, and I was telling her this story. It was a good story. It was a really good reason as to why everything was in shambles. And she sent me a text message. And on one side it said victor, and the other said victim. And she was very real with me, and I really appreciate that.
Yep.
And she said, Marilee, I love you, but you're telling yourself the victim story. And yes, this is real life. This is really hard.
Yep.
You don't have to feel this way all the time.
Yeah.
And I love how you said that we got to stop the blame, that we have to take responsibility.
Yeah.
Crappy things happen to people. It's just freaking life.
Kind of going back to the first thing that codes the unconscious, right, is repetition. So each time you visit that state, you visit the memory, you visit the story, you're creating repetition. Number 2, you're having an emotional response. So you're coding your nervous system, the same epinephrine, norepinephrine, all the neurotransmitters and peptides are flowing through your body. So you're equal to the state of mind you were in when it was created. So there's the strong emotional experience. And now because you spend so much time in it, you're immersed in it. And so you're living the story. Your nervous system is replaying it and you're chemically feeling it. So that's where I understand it's the hardest piece, and that's where you probably end up going to need the help.
It
but
sounds like venting is an unhealthy thing to do. Maybe like venting once or something.
Think about this. There's some validation sometimes in letting someone know that there was a problem.
Yeah.
We like to talk about our problems because we feel that it creates some kind of collaboration when someone's feeding it. Oh, yeah, you poor thing. Why did that happen? And there is something in that. But more than once, talking to that person, like revisiting, hey, do you remember when this happened? It just strengthens the problem.
Right. Okay.
So understanding that you're responsible, let's just say it that way, recognizing that if you were to change, it's you.
Okay.
And that needs to stop the blaming.
Okay.
That's just
Stop
one way to say it.
blaming.
Number
Number
two
one.
is a simple little technique, and I call it the neuro repatterning program. And what I ask people to do is each night, right before you go to bed, you sit down and you write 3 of the smallest things that you can be grateful for. Not the big things, not a $100 bill appeared out of nowhere and paid my rent or whatever. It's, I saw the sunrise, and that moment I realized I mattered. It seems small, but it's big. And then my child said thank you at dinner, or they liked what I made, or maybe my dog came up and just licked my hand and it made me know I was important. Those are small things that happen all the time that we don't give any value to. The reason we do that at night before we go to bed is because it helps the unconscious mind, what we call the reticular activating system, Tony Robb talks about a lot,
Yes.
is it draws our attention to what it thinks you're wanting. So if we start focusing on the small things, we start to notice them more. And we go from a place of victimhood to a place of abundance. We start to see that we are receiving. And there's a saying that says gratitude is the greatest state of receivership. And you recognize that in your own life. When you're grateful for things, more things happen.
Yes.
Absolutely. So
Right.
that's the next piece. And then in the morning, that same thing is in the morning, right when you get up, before you get ready, you write a paragraph of your perfect day.
Every single day you write a new paragraph.
You can write the same one. You can write a new one. You can do whatever. And what that does is it uses the morning, the dopamine, to say, this is what I want.
Can you write a paragraph and then just read it every day? Or does it really need to be a new one every day to frame your mind of what's coming?
I've done it both ways, and both ways work. And let me explain why I have you write. So when you write, your subconscious mind is what's moving the pencil or the pen. It's not
So
your
not my
conscious
notes
mind.
app,
No.
not my...
And there's a
I need to write
neurological, you learned it. And so when you were in 3rd, 4th grade, whatever, and cursive is important because it's forward thinking and problem solving. When we print, we don't create that same neurological connection. So when we write it out, the unconscious mind is accepting it. We're also saying it in our head as we're writing it. We're hearing it. And we're seeing
And
it.
we're seeing.
All right. So we're using 3 of the 5 senses we have to validate the future and to say, this is what I want. And then you get up and you take one small action towards that life. And you write it in the present tense. The unconscious mind doesn't have past, doesn't have future, it has now. So what we're doing is we're just telling the mind, this is what I want, but I want it now, and I'm going to act like it's already happened. And then number 3, the easiest thing to do is just when you close your eyes at night, think about all the things that make you happy. It's so simple.
That is...
It's almost like the gratitude
simple.
writing thing, but this is a little different because as you go through theta, so when you're writing, you're actually kind of in alpha, right? Those brainwave states. Then you go into theta, and you're just accepting that your life is happening for you, not to you. And you start to do that, and then as soon as you slip into sleep, that's the last thing on the mind. And so that will help you start to reprogram it. The reason you'd probably want to come see someone like me is if there's some roadblock that you don't even know is there, that I can help you access to get rid of it. But you can do it the other way too. It just takes time, kind of like the meditation does, because you don't even know what you're meditating about sometimes. I ask people all the time, do you know what the difference between meditation and hypnosis is? And they're like, no. And I'm like, imagine you wanted to get to the top of a mountain. It's the most beautiful place you've ever seen from a distance. And so meditation would be you deciding to go there. So you start hiking up the mountain and you see all the beautiful things. You cross the creek of water. You see a deer. You see all these wonderful things, but it takes you days to finally get to the top of that mountain. A hypnotist is the Sherpa. He says, I know how to get there. I've been there before. Get your backpack, and I get you there in 10 minutes. Then, once you've created the change, you can enjoy coming back down the mountain however you want.
Wow. It sounds like if someone that is stuck or having a hard time, I think not just entrepreneurs, I think everyone has moments in their life where they're like, I don't want to be like this anymore.
Exactly.
I got to let go of these patterns. And it sounds like if they do these things, even if they go and see you and change their life very quickly.
Mhm.
It just can remove these roadblocks out of their way. And even though it's like, okay, lay in bed and think of these things that make you happy and write this stuff down, it will actually help them progress in their business. And it probably make me think before I yell at my child or something.
Well, what's hard about it is there's no way for us to know all this. And we
Yeah.
always find out later in life, right? And luckily, our nervous system does resolve most of the trauma. It really does. It's some of these things that it doesn't that get stuck in a part of the brain that just ruminate. It's part of the amygdala, which is that fight or flight. We'll call it an organ.
I've been learning about the amygdala and the limbic system of our
Yes.
brain.
Yeah.
And it is wild, the subconscious automatic response that your body throws out that just is an
It's
automatic thing
instantaneous, right?
that you almost have no control over. So it sounds like people that have gone through trauma or have reactions or they react to things, I think one of the most difficult things in this life is to hold your mood when someone else around you is not holding theirs.
Yeah.
When someone else is angry at you or upset at a situation, not to, and this goes back to kind of what you said of perception is reality. Like, and it's so hard not to take that personal and to hold where you're at because you just go, it's so easy just to go down to
It is.
where someone else is.
So think about this, and I don't want to go down what's happened over the last 4 or 5 years, but we're giving a lot more validation to triggers, right? I am this way, and now everybody has to conform to the way I am. And that's not right. We are adults. We are human beings, and we have been given gifts. We have a mind. We have a brain. We can change. We don't need to say, I'm broken, and I'm going to stay this way, and now you can't ever talk to me. The problem is that the triggers there, the limbic system, the brain stem, all of that part of the brain, the primal brain, is still firing the same neurochemicals, the same peptides. They're still coursing through your veins, and you immediately go there. And so you have to choose out of it. But there's a better way. What if the trigger wasn't there anymore? Like when my wife saw the dog, the trigger was no longer present, so there was no response.
Wow.
And that's what I believe in. And that's what I've seen hundreds, if not thousands at this point, of people that just no longer have the trigger.
Yeah.
Right? You
sounds
can
like
white
it
knuckle, you can white knuckle your way through anything. But I don't like doing that. I'd rather just say, okay, there was a reason it was there. Am I going to let it control me the rest of my life, or am I just going to change the meaning? So the meaning no longer is there. Your nervous system created the meaning unconsciously and definitely not logically. Well, why let it control you any longer? Choices can be made. We can choose out of it. It does take time. And I applaud that. I've done that in my own life in a lot of ways. Even though I know how to hypnotize and everything else, they say if you ever go to an electrician's house, all the wires are sticking out of the wall, but when they go and work, everything's perfect. So I'm not saying I'm perfect. I got plenty of my own stuff that I'm still working through and I'm doing on my own. I'll hypnotize myself and all these things. But the cool thing is that I'm never going to stop progressing. And I don't want anybody else to just resign themselves to thinking they are who they are and everybody else has to conform to them. Because asking everybody to change for you is the most selfish thing you can do. But choosing to accept who you are, but accept that it doesn't need to be that way, is the most empowering.
Wow. That is a powerful statement. Sounds like there's so many different things that we do have the power to change. My whole goal is to have anyone listening to this not to believe in hypnotism, although I'm sure that they do now after listening to
I hope so.
all these things, but to really believe the power of your mind, that your mind has so much power. And I need to remember this, and I've got to start taking steps to move the roadblocks out of my way and stop overthinking things. And I'm going to do what you said. I'm going to do those 3 steps.
That's awesome. You know what else we could do?
What's that?
I could just hypnotize you.
You could. I don't know if I could be hypnotized. I don't know.
So a lot of people think that they can't be hypnotized because they think that it's a willpower versus the hypnotist. And the point is if you go to the doctor and you haven't, let's say you have an abscess in your leg, like you cut it, you didn't take care of it, now it's all weird. Are you going to fight the doctor? Are you going to run around the room and say, no, you can't cut me. I'm not going to let you fix me, right? You go in there and you say, okay, what are you going to do to help me? So when I ask people if they want to be hypnotized and they tell me what they want, I don't go in there and say, this is what you're going to want. They tell me what they want. And I just say, just follow my instructions and you get the cookie. You get the world's perfect cookie because you're going to follow the instruction. You're going to follow the game plan. And it's just natural and automatic and easy to go into that brain state because you know on the other side is everything that you want.
Wow. So could you hypnotize me to make chocolate taste like broccoli and broccoli taste like chocolate? Because that sounds like a dream to me.
If you were a somnambulist, one of those people I told you about earlier, yes. Okay. But most people just looking for neutrality. To go from not liking broccoli to just accepting it as food. That's easy.
Okay, so let's do it.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and hypnotize me. Let's
Okay.
go.
All right. Well, let's do it right now. Are you ready?
Okay,
All right. So do me a favor.
I'm ready.
Just relax. In a moment, I'm going to have you take 3 deep breaths and then you just go into trance. So when you're ready, take those 3 deep
I'm
breaths. 2 and 3. Just follow my voice as I guide you further down.
We are done with the show. Behind the scenes here. What's your website?
So jamespgustason.com is my website. And then if you're interested in learning more about the actual sessions, you go to heal.me/James. And so that's a website that is only for healers and people that do a lot of those things. I don't claim to be a healer. I don't diagnose, treat, or prescribe. I am just someone that knows how to get your mind to where it needs to be to change.
I love it. So I went and got hypnotized by James. I did this a week ago, and I have had such positive changes in my life, and it was instant. It was as soon as that I came back from the hypnosis, which seriously, it felt like 5 minutes, but it was really like 45. It was different. I was very surprised on how the whole process was. It wasn't what I thought it would be. If I didn't trust the person that I'm interviewing on this episode completely and know their integrity, I would never have been hypnotized. I was not out of control. I was not saying random things. In fact, I had more control over my brain than I've ever had. I used to have this feeling that I would get, and it would feel like this heaviness in my chest. And I would be like overthinking things, so many things. I would have this worry that was crazy. It would be debilitating almost. It would be, I don't want to take action because I am worried about what this person will think, or I'm worried about what that person will think. I've let it hold me back. In fact, I let it hold me back from starting this podcast over a decade ago. It takes me a long time to get over those imposter thoughts whenever it comes up. I'm not good enough, and what if it's terrible? Oh my gosh. I was able to basically, in my mind, rewrite some neural pathways that were unhealthy and put in some different beliefs in there. Now, those beliefs, they did not come from James. They came from me, and I didn't even say any of it out loud. It was all in here. So I think sometimes whenever we think of being hypnotized, we think of being so out of control and so just maybe, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? Or what if there's like something that gets planted in my brain that changes me forever? That doesn't happen. And the way that James does it, it really is a fast path. This is my own experience and my own interpretation. You can go through years and years and years of therapy and affirmations and trying to rewire or reprogram these neural pathways in your brain to think healthier thoughts and to be a better version of yourself. Or you can go into this brain wave state and you can just tell yourself, hey, this is what I want to do. And I'm not going to let this stop me. And you got this. You can do this. You're better than this. Quit worrying about what other people think about you. Why don't you just move forward? The right people are going to find you. Just like that, I could reprogram my brain. And when I opened my eyes, even though I have already started this podcast, even though I have already been taking steps, I'm getting out of my comfort zone, right? I am doing the hard things. Something shifted when I opened my eyes. And my husband was a little worried. He was like, what if you not care about or not worry about the bills getting paid? What if, you're messing with your mind here? And you are. You are messing with your mind, but it's not like that. You're not going to reprogram yourself to not worry about the things you're supposed to worry about. It was like a shift, like this weight lifted off of my chest where I wasn't scared to live in my truth, to speak my truth. It was very therapeutic, and I don't need to go back for a second session. One and done. One of the things that really surprised me about James is that he usually does not work with people more than once. Usually he just works with them one time and it reprograms this part of their brain of something that they're struggling with. If you have been curious about if it can change your life, reach out to James and do a consultation with him. And he doesn't work with everyone. See if it's a good fit and see if it's something that would benefit you. I'm not here to change your mind about hypnosis. I'm just here to share my own experience. If you loved this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Please pass it on and subscribe so you never miss a moment. The shift you're looking for is already happening. Keep leaning into it. I'll see you next time. Let's keep shifting.